Okay, friends, we are going to go on a fascinating journey. We're going to go on the journey, the first missionary trip of Apostle Paul. He and Barnabas set sail from Antioch and came to an island called Cyprus. We're here in Cyprus, and we're going to follow the ancient route of Apostle Paul and Barnabas, going from one side of the island to another. So join us on this exciting journey, and we're going to walk in Apostle Paul's first footsteps as he came to the island of Cyprus after being commissioned by the church, the ecclesia. Okay, guys, we are here in Salamis, and we are here at the original location of Paul's journey in Cyprus. So Barnabas and Paul left Antioch, and when they did, they went to Barnabas, his hometown. And that hometown was in a place called Salamis, and this is the remains of Salamis. So here we have Corinthian columns, and we have Roman statues, which you can see. There's a bath right there. All of this has been discovered by archaeology, and it's very consistent with Roman baths we've seen in other places, Herod's Palace, and other places we've taken you on tour. So we'll give you more on the amphitheater and other things here in Salamis. Okay, here we are in ancient Salamis. The gymnasium. And we're here to explain to you a couple exciting things. The journey, the race, okay? The Apostle Paul began his race in this very city. Now, I'm not sure what we can show and what's available from the excavations of the amphitheater here. We see that, and we can see some remnants of the ancient, you can see it here, stadion. And you remember how we were telling you stadium is a race. And so here we have the remnants of that race, that distance. The Apostle Paul and Barnabas, when they were here, were running that race. Well, this is the actual distance of that stadium. So we have a theater and remnants of a road or path, like a track. Okay, so part of it was in a theater, so they would have entered the theater. Okay, but you can see it's a stadium, and that's in this complex. This is a theater, and this is a staple of every Roman city. We'll see these throughout our tour of Cyprus. In each major city, you'll see something very similar to this, but this is the one in Salamis, and you can see that this is in use at this present time. The acoustics are excellent, it's very well preserved, and you're looking at something 2,000 years old. It's amazing. So we're here down below, you can see the staging and everything, and if you're here and the place where I'm standing and just talking the way I'm talking now, you can hear that voice. The acoustics are so good throughout this entire theater. The ancients were excellent at this. Here's a view of the complex on top of the theater. You can see how wide it is, and now we're looking down at the modern staging. And again at the complex. So it's from here we have a good vantage point of the size of the theater. I believe it's about 2,500 to 3,000 people. I'm not certain that this can seat.
Here is an excellent example of a Roman colonnade. There you see the drainage channel running underneath the road, and you have Roman columns on either side. Excellent example, very well preserved, as we have seen in Jerusalem.
So one of the roads is finished with a nice smooth white, almost like marble. You can see the remnants of the columns, and another colonnade continuing. Into the city, and nice Corinthian columns, pillars. And rooms. So here we have the Roman colonnade. We see the pavement stones, white pavement stones, the columns on either side. Here we have just beautifully preserved and placed columns. Inside we can see better ones. But here we have another amazingly preserved Roman colonnade, pavement stones, beautiful Corinthian capitals on the pillars, and the broad Roman entrance into the gymnasium. So just imagine it's like the big game, the stadium, you're entering in. It's like a procession. And so this is another example of the Roman colonnade that's very, very well preserved. And then we have the Corinthian columns and everything in the background.
Okay, here you can see we have nice examples of lamps from 50 BC to 395 AD. Roman lamps. Many, many examples that we've seen throughout the land of Israel. And we can kind of pick up on them because see how they form a pattern, and there's a hole in the middle like this. You have some motif in the middle, and then you pour the olive oil in the middle, and then the lamp will go and the wick will go on the outside. So that's how we know these are the Roman style lamps. And so they have different types of motifs, an eagle. Okay, here we have Greek alabaster bottles for various incense and oils. And here is the white alabaster that they're made out of. And they were very special because they could preserve the oil and the essential oils better than many materials. That's why we see the woman that opened the alabaster, it says in English box, but that really is a flask or a vase, and that's exactly what we are looking at here, the same style, that very precious oils. So these oils were very expensive, even in valuing them more than currency. And so these are examples of vases and flasks for anointing oils. And the alabaster box or flask was probably something like this.
Okay guys, here in Cyprus we're at the Barnabas Monastery. So it is in Salamis that Barnabas came from, and we're here at the monastery and viewing some of the story of Barnabas. But he was an amazing early church leader. We see him in Acts selling his property, and they've done this. This is of course, Eastern Orthodox style. You can see the stairs going up, And this feature is where they would read before the people, which you can see there. We also have the seat and the throne here. These are common Byzantine era features that would be in a monastery. Lots of pictures, many of them of Barnabas. For time's sake, I haven't actually looked into all of these, but I just want to share with you the story of Barnabas being from Cyprus, sold his property, gave it to the apostles, and was with the Apostle Paul on his first journey. His first journey began in Salamis, and there's a story which seems very much legend about his passing. He also died here in Salamis. It really sounds like more like legend than fact, but that's what we're looking at here with this church. And then you can see here stairs leading up, and the person would read from the platform. There's also older, this is, I believe, 5th century. So there's older 5th century features built into the structure here. It has really nice arches and has really maintained much of the characteristics. So you can see the beautiful roofs, and here's a chandelier. So you can see that. And this is the kind of main area. So it's a smaller monastery than what we've seen with the Byzantine larger structures in Israel, but very, very interesting and fascinating story. Here we may have something about Barnabas being killed here in Salamis, Cyprus. Here's the island of Cyprus, and you can see Salamis there on the right. Then there's a city called Kition, which we'll look at next. After that, Amathus, and then we'll finish up in Paphos. These are the ancient regions of the Roman cities on the island. There is going to be wind noise throughout this video, so I encourage you to add captioning so you can read the words as we go along. All right, guys, we are at ancient Kition, which is the name of Kition that we know from the scriptures. And we're here at an archaeology site where we have known locations and sites of the ancient city of Kition. Kition is the Phoenician name of Kition. And so this is one of the routes along the Apostle Paul's journey from Salamis down through the southern portion of the island, heading to the west. So we're going to go check out over here the ruins and the remains and everything here in Kition. And you can see from the sign the Great Temple. We have remains 1200 BC. A sanctuary monumental architecture was constructed here. A temple shown. This was an open-air sanctuary surrounded by a wall with the Holy of Holies at its western part. It was built in the area of the sacred garden and existed from the early 13th century BC from the temple, implying that the great goddess, the goddess of fertility, was worshipped here. Okay, and we see that pointed here, identified here, and that is this area here. The old wall. Okay, we have a sign. This is the closed courtyard. Tenemos. Entrance B. Alright, yeah, so here's the water tank there. And then by
Okay, Tenemos is on the other side. And we have stepped capitals. So this is time period 1200 BC. There also appears to be troughs and things for routing water. You can see there. So this is a whole major complex called Kition, guys. So Kition is when the Phoenicians had this as a settlement. And this is going back 1200 BC, but this was a city here in Larnaca. Larnaca is the present name of the city here. And you can see it's all around. It's a city. It's right on the beach. And it's very populous tourist area with the airport and everything. But what we have is just one dig. There's probably more to be found, but this is one area where they do show us the ancient Kition. So here it's identifying a altar, and then it says horns of consecration. So okay, here in ancient Kition, guys, we can see various walls. See that one there? And we can see a feature, as we've shown in the past in Jerusalem, some nice examples of what we call Herodian stones, or ashlar stones. Here are some here. And this would help us date and understand some of the building when it had taken place. So Herod the Great, Herod the Great builder, used stones with this feature, which we again can see right there. See the borders at the top along the seam of the stone. And here what we have is something a little bit unique, a little different than Jerusalem, in that the stones are exposed to the outside on either side, and we have fill and material in between. But if this is a feature that we would see in Jerusalem and other areas, it would help us date this as around the time of Herod the Great's building, just a little bit before BC and thereafter. So this is a very clearly seen feature in these walls, which we again can see here. But again, guys, this is the purpose of this site. This is where the Apostle Paul would have come. Ancient site. We have his time period. We do have stones reflecting that time period. So this is where archaeology can, support the biblical narrative. When Luke is recording the book of Acts, and Apostle Paul in Acts 13 comes here, he may have been looking at the same stones you're looking at right now. And we do know these as Herodian stones. Maybe it's just a border, but it's a pretty clear feature that we've seen throughout Jerusalem. And this site would also be the ancient.
What you see behind me is ancient Amathus, one of the most ancient cities and settlements on the island of Cyprus. We're right on the ocean. We have columns and various temples over certain periods of time, but this was the major route that would have run from the east to the west to Paphos, that the ancients, the Roman roads would have passed through these areas, and this is one of the ancient places. Lots of archaeology has been done here. One of the oldest places, amazing place here. If we look up the side, we'll get a better view for you to see the columns and the Roman places here. Amazing. Here's a nice outlook view where we have the ocean. We have a view of the ruins, some standing columns, the street. It's a really amazing archaeological site. Okay, here we have a bathhouse. And if the camera can focus, there are standing bricks suspending this area, which we know to be as typical Roman bathhouses that we've seen. Over to the top left cistern. It's not coming out clear in the video, but there's two standing columns right here and right here, and then there's an area here that may have been the furnace for the hot water. So it's just amazing to see a site with ruins and plumbing and hot water, of how, you know, how the Romans lived, or even after them and before them. But a big portion of the focus here is, you know, it is a temple. It is a place of worship, and their focus was on, you know, kind of goddesses. This is the Greek goddesses and everything, and Aphrodite and many of those, you know, types of things. So it looks like we can walk down here, which looks nice. Let's take a look and see where they let us go. Okay, here we have another pool area. A small bath. Oh wow, look at this, guys. This one even has water in it, but you can see the feature, almost like a statue, like that the water was flowing out of. They've suspended it, but it's very interesting. Maybe this is a platform they would walk on and extend to fetch water. Isn't that amazing? Something this old still has supporting water. And this one, look at this one. This one has lots of water. It's amazing. Ancient plumbing from the cistern, guys, amazing. Okay, so the water, if it overflows, it would come down, maybe enter this hole, and what you can see, this is plumbing. Maybe they could stop it and stop the flow, but you can see it's going down at a slope, going down, 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 and this is a pipe made out of stone. You see little holes above it that could have stopped the flow, but that is ancient plumbing right there.
right into the two major baths, right, or major cisterns, I should say. Maybe this one collected the water here, and then it began to flow into the pipes, which would then go throughout the various areas in the precinct. More ceramic plumbing, guys. Look at this. It's broken there, but you can see the pipe. And here's a piece right here. Actually, the ancient ceramic plumbing. So, Amathus is a port city. You can see some of the remains, the temple, basilica, and then it actually had an enclosed walled port. Here's the entrance to it. And they even have things they've seen underwater. And then the walls went around. There's the gate, entrance gate, which you can see here. So ancient Amathus, this is really amazing, guys. I hope you like this little section of Cyprus, a section of the tour. Being able to see the plumbing of the ancients, to see the road Apostle Paul would have traveled, to see the roads and many of the ruins here. It suffered earthquakes and damage and was repurposed at various times. But it really is an amazing place, amazing ancient city, going back many thousands of years. So I hope you like Amathus, and then we'll see if we can find the next city. Okay, guys, we're here at ancient Kurion, and here you can see the amphitheater that is actually still in use, all around, and amazing views. Look at the ocean behind us. And we just want to take a minute to talk about this site, Kurion, and as a whole, the island of Cyprus, and as it's called Kition in the scriptures. So as we look at it, there was a archaeological discovery, guys, a few years ago, as Harden, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it was in Nineveh, and this was a king that was over this island. And it's very important because the biblical record of kings and figures is accurate. And so we find this very figure in Ezra chapter 4, verse 2, with Zerubbabel, talking about the king of Assyria, as well as Isaiah 37. So it says that ships will come from the coast of Shittim and shall afflict Asher. So that was in Numbers chapter 24 with Moses. That's how long this island has been called Kition. And it was prophesying about this king of Asher all the way back in Numbers chapter 24, verse 24. So it's really, really amazing. And the other site, we may not have had the opportunity to describe it all, but Kition is the ancient name. And we have archaeological discoveries that we've shown you about Kition. And again, Kition is a name that's derived from the biblical Kitim. And that is what, of course, we have Cyprus. So this is another stop around the Apostle Paul's route. In each of these cities, Salamis, Kition, Amathus, and here, Kurion, is a kind of ancient district, okay? So each of those was an area, as well as Paphos, once we get to Paphos. So we're going to continue to search and discover and look at the area here. It's just, stunning views, amazing archaeology, as we have seen in all the other sites. Here are some beautiful mosaics of the gladiators. This is a house in which they trained or were given this prestigious accommodation.
Here it looks like we have a beautifully crafted mosaic. And back to this mosaic, if we look, we can see the woman's name and a description of what it says. It says here, in the long section of the third group, is a long central rectangular room. It has a mosaic dividing the areas. There are two decorated motifs. And the woman in a medallion holding a measuring instrument equating to a Roman foot. So that's very interesting because that measurement of a foot is preserved in the mosaic, so that if you were to measure that, you would actually know what a Roman foot is, which is quite interesting in our research of ancient measurements. So according to the inscription around her head, the young woman is Kitsis, and she personifies the creation of the world. So that is a Roman foot. Now this is an area of great interest on this channel. Let's just take a moment and look at something we know to be sacred or divine architecture. So before us here in front is a small kind of church. Okay, so there would be one area which would be like the Holy of Holies, and another area of the holy place. So the early Christians were making their basilicas, making their monuments after sacred architecture from the Bible, from the scriptures, combining the various information in the temple in Jerusalem, even though it was destroyed, but the measurements and the proportions, they would have applied those in a similar manner. Now, of course, this is an obvious time period we know to be Christian. So what they believed is that the area, the rounded area, was for the 24 elders. And then they had a altar. And they were patterning this after Revelation chapter 4. Okay, where you have the 24 elders, the 4 beasts, and then in the 5th seal, the souls that cry out from the altar. So they would pattern their structures with these concepts in mind. And this is a time period that is, of course, Roman Jerusalem. And we find this all throughout the land of Israel, and of course preserved here as well. So they would have reconstructed a lot of this after the damage of the earthquakes. But this is sacred architecture, guys. This is something that's really, really amazing. That, to think that the Apostle Paul came here with Barnabas as two men, two witnesses, and then a few centuries later you have the entire city, being converted to Christ, and instead of it being pagan temples for Zeus, they are, now structures to praise the Most High God by faith in Jesus Christ, His Son. So we'll take a look here close, but it's a nice vantage point we have here of the basilica, the church. And this would be pointed and positioned due east. Okay, friends, now our next place in our journey is Paphos. Paphos is on the western portion of the island. And yes, I'm wearing Middle Eastern attire because it's very hot. We're right on the sea. And we're going to see archaeological evidence to support the idea that, and not the idea, the fact that the Apostle Paul and Barnabas came to Paphos, and it was here that they appeared before the Roman consulate. Now, the place where I'm at is part of the narrative of the house of Thesis, which is a governor's place. So we can actually see evidence of this here by the various eras, but there is an area where I think it's Sergius Paulus was the proconsul of Rome at the time, and that's what we can see in Acts chapter 13. So let's look at Paulus. Now here in the complex of the Villa of Thesis, or the House of Thesis, we have this particular room depicting in a mosaic one of the myths of the area. This is the complex, and the area we're looking at in mosaic is right here. Nicely preserved mosaic, and in it we have the depiction of the myth of Achilles. Now this mosaic depicts many myths and aspects, but what we have here, if we look closely, we can see a person with a staff. We've been telling you about the staff, the reed, the measuring reed. It's like the scepter. And you have someone on a throne, and that is being expressed as a king sitting on a throne and ruling. And so that's what we would have here in this area, is the governor's seat, the throne of the area. And again, this is very important because modern archaeology has discovered this site, but it hasn't necessarily connected it and pinpointed it that this is the physical location where the Apostle Paul and Barnabas appeared before Sergius Paulus, which is very important to prove that the writer, Luke, is accurately describing an area and what's going on. Of course, many believers in the scriptures don't question that, but archaeology just continues to prove the facts of the historical accuracy of the scripture. We have another house of this one, Orpheus, 2nd, 3rd century AD. Only a small part has been excavated, but it brings to light an atrium, rooms, and mosaics depicting Hercules and the lion Nemea, and another of an Amazon, and the largest, most prominent mosaic depicts the musician Orpheus playing his lyre surrounded by beasts. So here is a lyre, and the animals, and how interesting. So here we have a musician playing a lyre, okay, and right here we have the sea. And with the sea behind us and the musician Orpheus with his lyre, certainly we are reminded of Revelation 15, when those that overcame the beast were on the sea of glass, playing the harp, singing the song of Moses and the song of the Lamb. So isn't that interesting that we're here and we have things related to a musician or the song of the overcomers.
They had harps of God, and they overcame the beasts.
Now, friends, we must emphasize the importance of what has transpired once the Apostle Paul has witnessed to Sergius Paulus in Paphos. This is a governor for the entire island of Cyprus that is converted to faith in Jesus Christ through the message of Apostle Paul and through the witness of the power of God that took place with the false prophet. He was so impacted by that he believed. Now this is 45 AD. Let's remember that. This is very significant because it's the first Roman convert recorded in the book of Acts. It's a very, very early Gentile convert, the only one Of course, you have things at the time of the Lord Jesus Christ where they're beginning to believe in him. But really, it's something that was very, very impactful for the island. That's why Satan had stirred up this false prophet to deter this Roman governor, if you were. So we're here in the Roman theater in Paphos. And, this is, again, where Apostle Paul encouraged us to run this race, this stadia. A stadia is a distance. That distance would go outside and then come inside the theater. Okay? So that's where we are amazingly here in Paphos, Cyprus. And then the Apostle Paul then set sail, elsewhere. But the importance of this believing Roman governor at this time, 45 AD, and then, as we've explained, many, many things changed. Of course, the Roman Empire became Christianized, and there were Christian churches in replace of the pagan gods and goddesses. But just amazing. I hope you guys, understand and appreciate the Apostle Paul's first journey. Now, friends, as we conclude our missionary journey with the Apostle Paul, here in this amphitheater, here you can see this lighthouse in beautiful Paphos. Let us be reminded of this amphitheater, this race, this idea that, all the world is a stage. Our life is a journey, right? And we're given the admonition by the Apostle Paul, and his name was changed to Paul here in Paphos, that there's a great cloud of witnesses in heaven. And that cloud of witnesses is like a stadium. They're, of course, encouraging us to lay aside every weight and sin that besets us in this race. And they are encouraging us to run this race. They are viewing in the grandstands of heaven, looking down at the participants, the gladiators, the warriors for Christ. Okay, there's a light shining, which we know Christ is that light. He is the light of the world, like the lighthouse is showing us. So we've made this journey from Salamis to the ancient site of Kition, to Amathus, to Kurion, and from Kurion to Paphos. And here we are at Paphos, where Apostle Paul gets his name. He was called Saul, and it was here his name was changed to Paul. Barnabas got his name in Jerusalem. They called him Joses, and then it was changed to Barnabas. And it was from here he continued his journey. This is the place it began, this journey, this island of Cyprus. So I hope that you have enjoyed this journey. We've done some other tours that you might be interested in if you haven't seen already regarding Jerusalem tours. We'll have a link in the playlist. So thanks for watching, and God bless you.